The rain didn't fall so much as it attacked, a horizontal, icy barrage that had long since soaked through my secondhand jacket. I huddled under the skeletal branches of the old oak tree, the one I'd fallen out of when I was 9 and broken my arm. From this distance, our house, no, their house, was a postcard of warmth. Golden light bled from the bay windows, painting the manicured lawn in long, cheerful rectangles. I could see shadows moving inside, the familiar silhouette of my mother arranging flowers on the mantelpiece. A fresh wave of nausea rolled through me. It was Christmas Eve. My fingers, numb and clumsy, fumbled with the phone in my pocket. The screen lit up, a stark digital reminder of my reality. A notification from my banking app. Account balance, $47.38. Below it, a text from my now ex-boyfriend, Mark. Lena, stop being so dramatic. It was just a joke. You always take everything so seriously. A joke. Right. Telling the entire office party that my little art hobby was a cute phase before I settled down and got a real job. That was a joke. Watching him laugh with his friends as my face burned, that was the punchline. I'd walked out, my pride a fragile shell around the crushing weight of his betrayal. And I had nowhere to go but here, the one place I swore I'd never return to. The walk from the bus stop had been a mile-long humiliation, my suitcase wheels catching in the cracks of the pavement, a tangible echo of every stumble I'd ever made in this town. Taking a shuddering breath, I dragged the suitcase up the familiar brick path, the sound of its clatter lost in the howling wind. I didn't ring the bell. I just opened the door, the warmth of the house hitting me like a physical blow, the scent of pine needles and roasting turkey so potent it made my eyes water. The conversation in the living room died instantly. My father was standing by the fireplace, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his face a mask of startled disapproval. My mother froze, a silver ornament dangling from her fingers. And in the center of the room, beaming like the Sun King himself, was my older brother David with his perfect wife, Chloe, and their 2 perfect children building a perfect Lego castle on the Persian rug. Eleanor? My mother said, my full name a blade of ice. What on earth are you doing here? You look drowned. I forced my voice to work, but it came out a broken whisper. Mark, I left him. I didn't have anywhere else to go. David let out a short, sharp laugh. What, the famous artiste is homeless? Shocker. He took a sip of his wine. Let me guess, your vision didn't align with paying rent? The familiar heat of shame flooded my cheeks. This was the family script. David, the pragmatic, successful surgeon, and me, the chaotic, emotional dreamer. I was the problem they had to solve. The messy splash of color on their pristine monochrome canvas. David, that's enough, my father said, but his tone held no real reprimand. It was the tone you'd use to scold a dog for barking too loudly. He turned to me. Lena, this is poorly timed. We have the Hendersons coming over for drinks in an hour. I stood there, water pooling around my worn-out sneakers on the polished hardwood floor. This was my entrance. Not a rescue, but an inconvenience. The argument that followed was a quiet, brutal thing, hissed between clenched smiles for the benefit of the children. It was a greatest hits album of my failures. You dropped out of a perfectly good business degree to paint, my mother sighed, as if describing a drug habit. That gallery showing was in a coffee shop, Lena, David added. You can't build a life on compliments from baristas. Mark is a good man from a good family, my father concluded, his voice final, stable. You should call him, apologize, and go back. This artistic temperament of yours is not a sustainable life path. I looked at them, these strangers who shared my DNA, and I felt something inside me, the last fragile thread of hope, finally snap. It wasn't loud. It was a quiet, definitive click. I am not going back, I said, my voice suddenly, strangely calm. And this isn't a temperament. It's who I am. My mother's lips tightened into a thin line. Then you need to figure it out, Eleanor. We will not enable this delusion any longer. You can't keep running home every time life gets difficult. Running home? I repeated, a hollow laugh escaping my lips. You think this is home? The silence that followed was heavier than any shouting. My father's face darkened. If you are so determined to spit on the life we've provided for you, on the stability we've offered, then you can leave. Right now. I looked from his stony face to my mother's averted eyes, to David's smug satisfaction. The warmth of the house was a lie. The Christmas cheer was a performance. I was the one piece of unscripted reality that had to be removed. "Fine," I whispered. I turned, my suitcase feeling 1,000 pounds heavier, and walked back out into the freezing rain. The door clicked shut behind me with a sound of terrifying finality. I was 24 years old, unemployed, heartbroken, and now officially homeless, with $47 to my name on Christmas Eve. I stood on the sidewalk, the rain washing away my tears the moment they fell, and I made a promise to myself, a vow whispered into the storm. I would never ever be this powerless again. I would never beg for a place in a house that was never a home. One day, I would own the very ground they'd thrown me out from. It wasn't a dream. It was a target. The next 72 hours were a blur of survival instinct. I sold my textbooks from my single semester of business school. I sold the small, good-quality headphones Mark had given me for my birthday. I sold my collection of art books, each one a small piece of my soul. It gave me enough for a week in a motel that smelled of mildew and regret. I got a job. Not a career, a job. Waiting tables at a 24-hour diner where the coffee was bitter and the customers were even more so. I worked the graveyard shift, coming home as the sun rose, my feet aching, my mind numb. During the day, while the world was at work, I painted. I painted on scraps of cardboard, on the backs of old menus, on a cheap roll of primed canvas I bought with my first tip money. I painted the loneliness, the rage, the bitter cold of that Christmas Eve. I painted the condescending smile on my brother's face. I painted the feeling of the door closing. My art was no longer a hobby. It was my exorcism. It was at the diner during a 3 a.m. lull that I saw the email. The subject line was, "Query, your artwork." It was from a woman named Isabella Rossi, the owner of a small but influential boutique gallery in the city. She'd seen a photo of one of my menu back paintings. That email from Isabella Rossi wasn't just a crack of light. It was a floodgate. I remember my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest, my paint-stained fingers trembling as I typed a reply. I didn't have a portfolio, not a digital one. I had a motel room filled with the ghosts of my anger and grief rendered in acrylic and desperation. I told her the truth. I was a waitress. I was broke, and I had nothing but my art. Her response came an hour later. "Bring it all tomorrow." I didn't sleep. I spent the night arranging my work, these jagged pieces of my soul, against the stained motel room walls. When I walked into her gallery the next morning, a chaotic mess of canvases tucked under my arms, I was prepared for pity. I got something else entirely. Isabella, a woman with a severe black bob and eyes that missed nothing, walked a slow circle around the pieces I'd laid on her polished concrete floor. She didn't speak for a full 5 minutes. Then she stopped in front of a piece I'd called Ejection, a violent swirl of dark blues and blacks with a single stark slash of gold where the door had closed. "This," she said, her voice quiet and certain, "this is what people need to feel. The price is $5,000. I thought I'd misheard. When I realized I hadn't, my knees actually went weak. She didn't just want one. She wanted 10. She gave me a solo show titled Fracture. It sold out in 3 hours. The art world, it seemed, was hungry for truth. My truth. The money wasn't just money. It was fuel. It was a down payment on my own future. I rented a small, sun-drenched studio with proper north-facing light. I quit the diner. For the first time in my life, I was building something that was entirely, unshakably mine. My work evolved. The raw anger softened into a complex exploration of resilience. I painted series on rebuilding, on finding light in cracks, on the quiet strength of survival. Each collection sold faster than the last. I was featured in magazines, not as a sob story, but as a rising phenom. I hired a financial advisor, a fierce woman named Anya who taught me about investments, about silent wealth, about building a foundation so solid no one could ever knock me off it again. I learned to play the game my father had always valued, but on my own terms. I didn't buy flashy cars or designer clothes. I bought assets. I bought a small apartment building, then a share in a tech startup that an old artist friend was founding. The money grew, quietly, exponentially. I was no longer Lena, the struggling artist. I was Eleanor Sloan, the brand. And through it all, I never lost sight of the target. I had a Google alert set up for my parents' address. I watched the real estate market in that neighborhood with the focus of a hawk. I knew their financial situation wasn't what it seemed. David had over-leveraged himself on a new practice, and my father's conservative investments had stagnated. The house, the beautiful, terrible house, was their biggest, most illiquid asset, and I knew, with a cold, patient certainty, that it would become their Achilles heel. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. It was from a realtor I'd retained for exactly this purpose. "Eleanor," she said, her voice crisp and professional. "The Sloan property has been officially listed. Financial distress. They're motivated." A calm I hadn't known in 7 years settled over me. "Make the offer," I said. "Full asking price, all cash, through the corporate entity." The entity was named ES Holdings. They would have no idea it was me. The sale was swift, impersonal, and conducted by lawyers. I imagined the scene in that pristine living room. The shock, the disbelief, the frantic scrambling. They thought a wealthy corporation was saving them from ruin. They never suspected it was their cast-off daughter, orchestrating their exit from my own past. The day I got the keys, I drove my modest, reliable car down the familiar brick path. I didn't get out immediately. I just sat there, in the silence, looking at the house. The lawn was slightly overgrown. One of the shutters was hanging crooked. It didn't look like a fortress anymore. It just looked like a house. I walked to the front door, the new cold brass key heavy in my hand. I unlocked it and stepped inside. The air was still and smelled of dust and absence. The furniture was gone, the rooms echoingly empty. I walked through the hollow spaces, my footsteps the only sound. I stood in the spot where I'd dripped rainwater onto the floor. I looked into the living room where David had laughed at me. It was all just space, neutral territory. The ghosts were gone because I had exorcised them with every brushstroke, every success, every silent, powerful decision I'd made. I had won. And the most surprising thing was, it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a release. I was about to leave when a car pulled into the driveway. I watched from the window as my mother got out, her face drawn and pale. She must have come to collect the mail. She looked at my car, confused. Then her eyes traveled to the front door, which I'd left slightly ajar. She walked slowly up the path, a hesitant figure where once a giant had stood. She pushed the door open and saw me. For a long moment, she just stared, her brain trying to reconcile the woman I had become, confident, poised, standing in the heart of her lost home, with the memory of the drowned rat she'd thrown out. "Eleanor?" she whispered, her voice cracking. What are you doing here?" "This is private property." I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I simply held up the key, the morning light glinting off its metal teeth. "No, Mother," I said, my voice even, devoid of the anger or triumph she must have expected. "It was just a fact. It's mine." The color drained from her face. She looked ancient suddenly and terribly small. The foundation of her entire world, the symbol of her status and success, had just evaporated from beneath her feet and materialized in the hand of the daughter she deemed a failure. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out.